President Trump is trying to capitalize on the momentum from the Gaza deal to entice Iran into cooperation. Let's get additional details on the President's Day from Chief Washington correspondent Mike Emanuel at the White House tonight. Good evening, Mike.
Brett, good evening. President Trump says the first steps to peace are always the hardest, but says it is happening because there's been a great deal of cooperation as he takes a victory lap in the Middle East.
This is not only the end of a war. This is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God.
In a speech before Israel's Knesset, President Trump said peace is coming to the Middle East following generations of conflict, noting this opportunity for Palestinian leaders and their people.
This is their chance to turn forever from the path of terror and violence. It's been extreme, to exile the wicked forces of hate that are in their midst.
If not, the president told Fox's Trey Yingst the U.S. is in a strong position.
I think we have a lot of leverage over them.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was invited to join the president and world leaders in Egypt to discuss the future of Gaza. There were reports he was expected to attend, but ultimately he declined, citing the start of a Jewish holiday at sundown. In Egypt, President Trump expressed his appreciation to President el-Sisi for help in the peace process.
Because Hamas respects this country and they respect the leadership of Egypt.
It was also clear today that President Trump would love to cut another deal in the region, suggesting he could reach an agreement with Iran, making the case the U.S. military strikes on Iran's nuclear program were the catalyst.
So I think when we wiped out that destructive capability, I think that had a lot to do with it all coming together.
The Iranian regime declined an invitation from Egypt to attend the summit, but its foreign ministry said it is monitoring progress.
We believe that, given the Zionist regime's long record of deceit, it's crucial to stay alert at all levels, including in defense.
While this was an historic and overwhelmingly positive day, there could still be bumps in the road ahead, such as whether Hamas will disarm and whether the ceasefire will hold. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is due here at the White House on Friday as the president shifts his focus to that military conflict. Brett?
Yeah, so much attention, obviously, today on the Middle East and all those images. What's the news as it relates to China?
Well, a big shift there. The president saying he has a strong relationship with President Xi Jinping of China. They have a great relationship, and he's a great leader. That's a big shift from what we heard late last week when the president was threatening a new 100% tariff on Chinese imports to go into effect November 1st. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the U.S. and China spoke over the weekend. It sounds like President Trump and President Xi will meet in Asia later this month. Brett?
Mike Emanuel, live on the North Lawn. Mike, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Trump! Thank you, Trump! Thank you, Trump!
And President Trump getting a hero's welcome in Israel on a very historic day. Hamas releasing all 20 living hostages as part of the peace deal that Trump brokered. Emotional scenes as families were reunited with loved ones who were held hostage for 2 years. The president getting a thunderous ovation while addressing the Israeli Knesset. And he couldn't resist taking a few shots at his predecessors while he was at it.
But when you settle 8 wars in 8 months, that means you don't like war. Everyone thought I was going to be brutal. In fact, I remember Hillary Clinton during a debate, she said, look at him, he's going to go to war with everybody. And actually, she said, he's got a personality that's all about war. No, and my personality actually is all about stopping wars, and it seems to work. It could have happened a long time ago, but it was strangled and set back almost irretrievably by the administrations of Barack Obama and then Joe Biden.
And then it was to Egypt. President Trump shaking hands and meeting with 30 countries for a Gaza peace summit, hoping to keep the momentum going on his 20-point plan for peace in the region.
Now the rebuilding begins. The rebuilding is maybe going to be the easiest part. I think we've done a lot of the hardest part because the rest comes together. The momentous breakthrough that we're here to celebrate tonight is more than the end of the war in Gaza. It's with God's help. It'll be the new beginning for an entire beautiful Middle East. All the momentum now is toward a great, glorious, and lasting peace, and our commitment to fulfilling the 20-point plan. I hope everybody's going to join the Abraham Accord. I like to say the Avraham. I love Avraham.
And here's something for a change. Some Democrats and media pundits were willing to give credit where credit is due.
This was very much a peacemaker's speech.
Do you give him credit for this?
Oh, certainly. I mean, this is an incredible accomplishment, an incredible moment.
It's a terrific day for the hostage families. It's a terrific day for President Trump, for our national interests.
He should get a lot of credit. I mean, this was his deal. He worked this out.
Listen, he got the deal across the finish line. There's no question.
Things seem sort of possible now in a way that they didn't necessarily before.
A better future ahead. That's what today represented. It was so powerful and unbelievably emotional.
And it went on from there. I think Hillary Clinton even had some nice things to say. Jesse Waters, we'll start with you on this huge moment. And I would just point out that President Trump, before he flew all the way there, he was ready to stand there in solidarity with his friend, be a part of this peace movement, and take it to the next level in phase 2. But before that, he also met with former hostages and their families in order to hear directly from them.
Yeah, he was so successful because he turned everything on its head. Great day for everybody, but a huge indictment of American foreign policy over the last 30 years. Donald Trump bombed the Iranians instead of giving them cash. He turned Israel loose in the region instead of trying to contain Israel. He sold the Arab leaders technology instead of just weaponry. And all of the talk about human rights abuses really rubbed these Arab leaders the wrong way. And he focused on controlling the human rights abuses of the terrorists. Imagine that. He removed Palestinian statehood as the cornerstone of the negotiation strategy. And then he also turned loose New York real estate developers. Who would have thought they would have been more effective than career diplomats? Joe Biden, when he first gets in there, called the Saudi Crown Prince a killer. And then he told him he was going green. And then what did he do? He came back begging to pump more oil. So then when he wanted more help to solve this thing, they put him to voicemail. And all the people you showed praising Donald Trump for his success in the Middle East, they wanted to put him in prison. So if they had been successful in putting him in prison, Hamas would have still had the hostages and the Iranians would have still had their nuclear program. It kind of hinges, this whole peace deal, on the Bibi miscalculation when he tried to take these strikes against these negotiators in Qatar. Trump was shocked that he did that, and the Arab world was humiliated. And he brings Bibi back to the White House, and he makes him make an apology phone call while everybody was taking photographs. And that showed the Arab world that Trump could control Netanyahu. And that means they trusted him, that if Netanyahu signs this deal, Trump will make sure he doesn't break it. He was able to establish that trust through a personal relationship. And hopefully, what he's doing now in Ukraine, the way he turned Israel loose in Syria and Iran and Lebanon and in Gaza, he's now considering turning the Ukrainians loose by selling them Tomahawk missiles, because the nice stuff hasn't worked with Putin yet. He might have to turn them loose and have deep strikes inside of Russia, and that might bring an end to that war. And if you could do that, you got to give the guy the Nobel Peace Prize.
In fact, I think I just saw on X that Time Magazine, it's not Time Magazine Person of the Year, but they have him on the cover and giving him due credit. Harold Ford Jr., get your thoughts now.
Good to be back with everybody. I agree with Jesse in huge ways. I think Jesse's sketching out of the history over the last several months, starting with, I think, two things: our ability to go into Iran with the Midnight Hammer mission and destroy and undermine their ability to fund and provide their proxies with weapons was a huge thing. The Israelis really paved that for us because they cleared their airspace, and we have the technology and had the men and women to be able to get it done. And then obviously, Jesse, I think you're absolutely right. The attack of the Hamas negotiators in Qatar rubbed Qatar the wrong way, and it gave President Trump the opportunity to apply pressure to both sides. And now we've got to do it. We've got to do it in Ukraine. I'd say just two last things, because I think Jesse nailed it. What I hope emerges from this, because there's there are real questions that we will now have to deal with, and it was so encouraging to see the president there with the leadership in the Middle East, as well as many of our European allies. And I actually think some of the pressure they applied to Israel by saying that they wanted to recognize Palestine as a state. Was something that also helped in this process as well. But we shouldn't kid ourselves. It was President Trump that did it. Two things. Will there be a new generation of leadership that emerges as we think about the way Gaza is going to be governed, new younger leadership? You talked about MBS and how he was perceived and treated by President Biden. He's a young guy who realizes that the future of that region cannot just be tied to energy products. He wants technology and other things, and clearly what President Trump did by brokering the sale of massive amounts of our AI and massive amounts of our technology will help that. We should all recall 2 years ago, right before October 7th, the Israelis and the Saudis were on the verge of a massive and historic peace and economic security deal, which would have transformed the region as well and added to the Abraham Accords, depending on how you want to pronounce it. So I'm hopeful and encouraged this afternoon, and I'm even more so that President Trump is now saying his trust for President Putin is at an all-time low, and he's going to give these people offensive weapons, tomahawks, in order to bring them to the table. So I agree with you 100%.
Kennedy, I could watch the reunion videos all day, and I have watched so many of them, and it does remind you just the barbarity of Hamas. And all of this could have ended if Hamas would have released all the hostages immediately, and Israel said that it would stop. The hostages are released, the war has stopped.
20 of them are. And, you know, for those 20 families, there was so much uncertainty. And the only thing that felt certain was this war was going to drag on for another year. It felt interminable. And they may not see their loved ones again. You know, the hostage videos that we have seen, the dramatic weight loss and, you know, the change in complexion and body makeup, it was so jarring for people. You know, seeing your loved one digging his own grave, seeing these people wither and grow pale. And the worry is that you're going to be on the list of families who are called when their loved ones didn't make it. And, you know, they prayed and hoped beyond hope. And this, for them, is something that they were trying to put into words in the Knesset in Israel as President Trump spoke. And, you know, the Speaker of the Knesset said that President Trump is the greatest ally Israel has ever had. Benjamin Netanyahu said that he was going to nominate President Trump for the Israel Prize, something that no non-Israeli had ever won. And, you know, when I look at this, I think, would we see a day like this? I hope that we would have if President Biden hadn't dropped out of the race, if he was, by some strange miracle for him, reelected, or if Kamala Harris had prevailed. And it's very hard for me to conceive of a president like this under her leadership. And, you know, this is the defining moment of his presidency so far. You know, we're only the first year into his second term. And, you know, I think that he is very hungry for peace and for more deals. And the way the world and Democrats have coalesced around him, I think that has to give Russia pause, because they feel momentum shifting against them and they see how quickly things can change. And, you know, all you have to do is ask.
There's also a really interesting mix of a few months of, well, since President Trump was in office, of soft power through the State Department and the hard power from the Defense Department and Operation Midnight Hammer, I know that's your nickname, and how that was able to put these puzzle pieces together so that President Trump could bring everybody to the table and get it done.
That went all over my head.
Why?
I don't know anything about soft and hard power. I do know about Stephanie Power, amazing in Herbie Writes Again. I want to talk, I'm interested in what's happening, like, around us. Like, every day you hear how awful Donald Trump is until something like this happens and it just goes deathly quiet. It's just like all of a sudden people go back. You know what? Maybe that's how they should live their lives. Do not pay such a close attention to this and go about your lives, because you're going to be proven wrong. I have a suggestion. We have a huge audience, and the reason why we have a huge audience is because we have a lot of liberals watching. So if you're watching, here's just one request. You saw Trump bring Israel and Hamas to the table to make peace. Maybe draw inspiration from that and call that one person, a relative or a friend, that you deserted or blocked because they voted for Trump. Just, I mean, this is such a huge deal. Your little vendetta, it can't be that hard to fix. You might have a sister-in-law, you might have a cousin, you might have an old friend from college. Like, if Trump can do that, maybe it's time that you decide that you were a little harsh on your friends and the people because they happened to see something in Trump that you missed, because you did miss it. Politicians like Joe Biden and the rest, they live in the world of the acceptable. They accept everything. There's going to be death, they accept it. There's going to be poverty, they accept it. They accept everything. Trump came from the world of the unacceptable. He came in, he's like, what's this got to do? He would ask, why are we doing this? I don't understand that. Why do we have all this money there? I don't get this at all. I don't like war. Because he would not accept the managed decline and the constant death, he became unacceptable to them, to the people that were in power. He thought big. He sees everything as a moonshot. What could happen? Maybe not, maybe not. He thought that the impossible was possible. So I would love for never Trumpers to ask themselves about the possibility that the things that they hated about him are what make him successful. And perhaps your ego was hurt by the fact that he believed that these great things could happen, and he was persistent and relentless and positive, and that just seemed so alien to you. If you think about it, where are his critics today? How small are they? Because I can't see them. Where is Bill Kristol? Where is Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, Gavin Newsom, Vindman? Where are these people? We should do a show on Fox Nation called Where Are They Now? And just do because I want to know, how do you look in the mirror when you see, after years of mocking people who had faith in this guy, people who risked a lot of stuff to support Trump that you made fun of, the George Takei's of the world that ridiculed it, where are they? Don't you owe the people that you mocked some kind of apology? This guy is solving world peace. He closed the border. He's trying to reduce crime. Anyway, they'll find something new.
They will. They'll wait a full 24 hours. And
yes.
We'll be back at it.
Thank you, Trump! Thank you, Trump!
It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
We're witnessing, in my view, a major geopolitical paradigm shift in the Middle East. Now we have a challenge in front of us, dealing with phase 2.
Historic day. All those images, all those reunited families with living hostages. And that was the front cover. That will be the front cover of the New York Post tomorrow. Freedom. Nightmare ends as Hamas frees living Israeli hostages. As said, a lot of challenges to come. But what about this day? Let's bring in our panel. Fox News contributor Mark Thiessen. Josh Kraushaar is a Fox News radio political analyst. And Annie Linsky is White House reporter for the Wall Street Journal. All right. Mark, put it in context. You've done a lot of speeches in your career about big moments. This seemed like one of them today.
It was a huge moment. And if you think about it, a year ago, Donald Trump was wearing an orange vest and riding in a garbage truck, campaigning to try and get back the White House. And today, he stood astride the world and delivered something that had eluded every Republican and Democratic president for a half century: Middle East peace. I mean, that is a stunning political comeback. It is a stunning foreign policy achievement. It is something that many of us never thought we would see.
And the emotional videos, Annie, that really led the day, obviously, and all of those families reuniting. The White House is already talking phase 2, but they're kind of living in this moment, too.
Yeah, I think this is really, the White House sees this as the day to absorb this extraordinary accomplishment by the president and his team. And just watching those videos, you can just feel the pain and the emotion and the joy coming through. And, this is a pivotal moment in Donald Trump's presidency, and it is a time for his team to reflect. And they're very happy right now, as are the families and many, many people in the Middle East.
Yeah. Here is President Trump talking in Egypt and Sharm el-Sheikh about next steps in rebuilding.
Now the rebuilding begins. The rebuilding is maybe going to be the easiest part. I think we've done a lot of the hardest part because the rest comes together. We all know how to rebuild, and we know how to build better than anybody in the world. I want to express my tremendous gratitude to the Arab and Muslim nations who helped make this incredible breakthrough possible.
You know, Josh, I had the Qatari spokesperson for the foreign ministry on, and there is, you know, some skepticism about how fast it's going to come together, but it does seem like there's buy-in. There's at least buy-in that they're going to try really hard to make this work.
The most important part of the 20-point Trump plan is the fact that you had all the Arab allies, along with Israel, all on the same page. Now, I think once we get forward and we actually have to deal with the details, and I think most importantly, like, when is Hamas going to be ousted from power? There's going to have to be buy-in from the Arab states to push Hamas out and have some kind of technocratic governance in Gaza, and that's going to be, I think that's going to be a bigger challenge than even the hostage deal itself. But the fact that you had leaders of Arab states, European countries, everyone's on the same page. So that is the best political momentum President Trump could ever hope for in trying to accomplish what looked like impossible just a few weeks ago.
It was interesting to see some Democrats praise President Trump. Some of them were very reluctant in doing so. It seemed slow out of their mouth, maybe. But it was big enough that it seemed like it crossed that. The ceasefire now crowd, have not heard a lot from them.
Yeah, because we got a ceasefire. But, you know, I'm sure we will continue to hear from them because it wasn't about a ceasefire. It was about the Jews. That's what these protests are about, anti-Semitism. But look, the reality is that the way Donald Trump achieved this is by completely, you know, you see Anthony Blinken going out sort of trying to take credit for this, saying, well, we laid the groundwork for it and he brought it over the finish line. No, he repudiated Biden's approach. Biden's approach was deny them weapons, slow roll weapons, and restrain Israel from going into Rafah, from going in and expanding the war. What Trump did is he came in and he said, unleash the weapons and unleash Israel, go and defeat them militarily, and then we'll have peace. And that's exactly what happened. So it was a direct repudiation of the Biden approach.
Well, not only that, the Obama and Biden approach about Iran,
yes,
too, and how to treat Iran. And arguably, that Operation Midnight Hammer did change the dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you look at where do you go next, certainly governance in Gaza is one place to look, but also, you know, is there going to be a change in Iran, as Trump previewed a little bit today? And then do you start to look to other regions of the world, Ukraine and Russia being something that Trump himself mentioned today?
Right. So what about that, Josh? Does this win on the foreign policy front change the tectonic plates when it comes to other places?
It sets a model that peace through strength, force against America and Israel's enemies worked. It worked in Iran. In fact, I think the Prime Minister mentioned that in his speech at the Knesset, that this would not have happened if it wasn't for Israel feeling confident that its enemy, Iran, their nuclear program had been significantly degraded. And that's a model for dealing with Ukraine and Russia, in the sense that if Ukraine feels confident that America is really 100% committed in terms of deterring Russia and protecting Europe, that is what can lead to the same positive results and maybe lead to a diplomatic agreement there under better terms than what we have now on the ground.
We have President Zelensky arriving at the White House again for a one-on-one meeting. Meantime, China and the tensions, the trade tensions. Here is the President and the Treasury Secretary and the Vice President.
I think we're going to be fine with China. Look, I have a great relationship with President Xi. He's a very tough man. He's a very smart man.
This is China versus the rest of the world. We have aggressively pushed back against them. We're not sure where this came from, why the Chinese have decided to do it now.
I guarantee you the President of the United States has far more cards than the People's Republic of China.
You buy that last statement?
Well, I think Donald Trump is going to handle Xi Jinping in the near term. The long-term problem we have is that the fact that China can actually throttle our access to rare earths and throttle our economy as a result, and have that kind of leverage of the United States.
But do we have more leverage on them, or do they have more leverage on us?
I think we have many points of leverage, but that is a point of leverage that they have over us. And the climate radicals who are running around saying we should get rid of fossil fuels, which we have in abundance, and become more dependent on China for a technology that requires rare earths that we can only get from China, is insanity, even from a national security perspective.
But there seemed to be a growing confidence about being able to deal with this at least the way the president talked about it over the last day and a half.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about leverage, I mean, 15% of Chinese exports go to the U.S. The Chinese need U.S. technology for semiconductors. I mean, their economy is in trouble. So do they need us? Absolutely, they do. So I think that the vice president has a good point there. There are a lot of cards, and to Treasury Secretary Bessent's point, this really came out of nowhere, and it has also been sort of tamped down a little bit in the last few hours and days.
It may be. Remember me. I can still cause you problems. Maybe that's it. I got to run. Panel, thanks.
We're watching this motorcade drive through Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt here. I want to bring in Fox News contributor Mark Thiessen. Mark, I'm watching these images and I'm getting chills as someone who has, has a household that has been talking about this conflict since the day that I was born. I mean, as far back as I can remember, this is an incredible moment here. Just give us your top-line thoughts. What are you feeling?
It's an incredible moment, and I think it's worth noting that if you think back almost a year ago, almost to the day, Donald Trump was serving French fries in McDonald's. And here he is a year later, standing astride the world stage. It's one of the greatest political comebacks in modern times, and it's having an effect on the world. I was thinking about Ronald Reagan said in his Time for Choosing speech, you can have peace tomorrow, and you can have it in a second, just surrender. This is the opposite. This is peace through victory. If you think about what has happened since the October 7th attacks, all three Sinwar brothers killed, the entire Hamas senior leadership eliminated, Hezbollah's entire leadership eliminated, and most of its operatives killed through exploding pagers and walkie-talkies and airstrikes. Syrian regime, Assad is gone. Iran's greatest ally in the region, which shut down the arms pipeline from Iran into Gaza and Lebanon and the West Bank. The Iranian entire air defenses and its ballistic missile program destroyed by Israel, and Operation Midnight Hammer, as President Trump said to Trey Yingst, key factor in this deal. This is peace through victory. What Donald Trump did was the opposite of what Joe Biden did. Joe Biden throttled weapons to Israel and tried to force them to stop fighting before victory. They tried to stop them from going into Rafah, which ended up being the operation where they killed Sinwar. Trump released the weapons and told them, go get them. And when they did, he said, okay, now you got them, now we can have peace. He forced Hamas into a corner. And that's what we're seeing today is not just peace, it's peace through victory.
Mark, can you talk about where the ceasefire now crowd is? Like, I don't see, they're not at Columbia University today.
It's funny. A lot of them were still protesting. They were protesting the peace deal. It was never about genocide. It was never about Gaza. It's all about hating Jews. And I'm sure they're going to continue marching. They were marching this weekend in London. They were marching all over the world. They're the odd man out because we now have the hostages released. And all the rest of it. But, the hard part is still coming up. We need to, this is a great day for the people of Israel to have the hostages back, but we've still got to disarm Hamas. We've still got to enforce, got to come up with an international force to come in and secure their area and make sure that Hamas understands it will have no role in the future of Gaza. Hamas basically still has to surrender. And they haven't fully done that. If you look at them, they came back into some of the areas that Israel vacated, and they were shooting people who they considered to be traitors. They were, I don't think that they fully made peace with the fact that they're not having a role in the future of Gaza. And so that's what's got to be discussed here today.
Mark, just really quickly, I want to read to you a text I just got from Dan Hoffman, who tends to be very cautiously optimistic, cautious, I would say. And he said, who cares about a Nobel Peace Prize? The Nobel Committee is not a constituent. Trump serves the American people. If he's doing right by our national security, that is all that matters. I would say a lot of folks are thinking that in this moment. Mark, thank you for joining us.
Freed hostage Matan Angrest, reuniting with his family. I mean, these are the sounds of these, and the siblings and the people who wait so that they can first hug mom and dad. It's really extraordinary. So President Trump said that this is the beginning of a new chapter for the whole Middle East.
It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin reporting live from Tel Aviv. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Martha. President Trump joked he wasn't quite sure what was happening when 6 Egyptian Air Force fighter jets greeted him as Air Force One left Israeli airspace en route to Sharm el-Sheikh for that signing ceremony with 35 nations signing the 20-point peace deal that President Trump oversaw. He said he assumed at the time that they were friendly.
This breakthrough that we're here to celebrate tonight is more than the end of the war in Gaza. It's with God's help, it'll be the new beginning for an entire beautiful Middle East.
President Trump thanked Egyptian President al-Sisi, who hosted the talks last week that led to the breakthrough in Gaza and the release of hostages today. He recognized the terrible loss of 3 Qatari negotiators who died in a tragic car accident after the deal was agreed to. President Trump also thanked Turkey's President Erdogan and called out the many Middle East leaders who he praised for having the wealth to rebuild Gaza.
Excellency President, you have demonstrated that genuine leadership doesn't mean war waging, rather the ability to bring it to a halt. We trust your leadership that is capable to carry out the current deal.
Peace has been achieved after untiring efforts. Efforts led by President Trump, who is genuinely a man of peace. And today, again, I would like to nominate this great president for Nobel Peace Prize.
President Trump greeted the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, who just a few weeks ago was barred from attending the United Nations General Assembly because the State Department would not authorize a visa. How the Middle East has changed since then, Martha. 20 living Israeli hostages returned home today. 4 of the 28 dead hostages returned from Hamas to their families here in Israel. We expect more in the coming days, but a little bit disappointing for some of those Israeli families. And then nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees returned to cheering crowds in the Gaza Strip, where the rebuilding is going to begin. Back to you, Martha.
Jennifer, thank you very much.
President Trump wrapping up a historic Middle East trip. Overnight, he's going to return to D.C., where the shutdown saga is continuing. Vice President Vance warning that deeper cuts may lie ahead for federal workers. The warning coming as the shutdown seems set to pass the 2-week mark tomorrow. Joining us now is Yemisi Egbawale, former chief of staff of the White House press office under Biden, senior advisor, Dream for America, and Matt Whitlock, former senior advisor at the National Republican Senatorial Committee. Title's getting longer and longer. It's taking more time here. I want to get into the shutdown in a second, but first of all, I just want to ask you quickly about what's going on in Israel and the fact that we haven't heard from Chuck Schumer on this. Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffrey said it's good that the hostages are out. Jeffrey says we must now recommit to achieving a just and lasting peace in the region. Nancy Pelosi saying we must now ensure full humanitarian access in Gaza. And critics, including Matt, are saying, who's we? What did you have to do with this? And why can't they just say, give Donald Trump the win?
Yeah, I think they should say what Secretary Clinton said. She said, I commend President Trump for doing this. She recognizes, as a former Secretary of State, the magnitude of this moment. I think it's okay for Democrats to say so. I think it speaks louder if we don't say anything at all.
I completely agree with that.
Because you actually tweeted back at Nancy Pelosi.
Oh, it's hard for me to see Democrats say this is a continuation of Biden's policies when so much of Biden's policies focused on appeasing Iran and not taking the steps needed to get these hostages home. And that's why I do feel like this is a Berlin Wall moment for President Trump. And I appreciate the Democrats that are giving him the credit he deserves on that, because this is a massive, massive moment for our country and the world in a way that only President Trump, I feel like, really could have done.
Well, it's sort of emblematic, isn't it, of the divisions in Washington, D.C. that continue with the shutdown. J.D. Vance yesterday warning that the longer this goes on, the deeper the cuts are going to go. Listen here.
The longer it goes on, Maria, the more significant they're going to be. The longer this goes on, the deeper the cuts are going to be. And Maria, to be clear, some of these cuts are going to be painful. This is not a situation that we relish.
But Donald Trump has said he wants to remake government. This is a great opportunity for him to do it. How long can Democrats resist the pressure before they say, okay, enough? We'll come back to the table.
Well, I think there's fatigue on both sides of this. I do think shutdowns are a little bit of a game of chicken, and the person who acquiesces first is the person that takes the blame. I'm actually surprised that Chuck Schumer and Jeffries have held out this long. I definitely thought that some of the Democrats would feel the pressure and move forward. I mean, John Ossoff is running a pretty tight campaign right now. He might feel that kind of pressure. But at this point, you have to just hold strong. Maybe when the president comes back, look, he's been able to get Israel and Palestine to come to the table. How can you not get a Chuck Schumer and a John Thune to the table again?
Because solving Middle East peace is a lot easier than bringing Democrats and Republicans together.
Congress.
Can you imagine? Here's what Senator Kelly said about the cuts. Listen here.
We've never seen a president do anything like this before. They do not have to do this. They do not have to punish people that shouldn't find themselves in this position. And the reason they're here, though, is because this administration is about to drive our healthcare system for 23 million people over a cliff.
Do we really think that's true? Because the Republicans have said, look, open the government. We'll talk about extending the Obamacare enhanced tax credits.
Well, I think that there's two things I'd say here. First, what a rough contrast for Democrats to have President Trump returning from actually helping deliver peace in the Middle East while Senate Democrats are in Napa doing wine fundraisers and shutting down the government. I think the Democrats are in a very, very tough position here. Mark Kelly knows that he's not really convincing anybody with this argument. And as Republicans have said, come to the table. The problem for Democrats is they want to pick and choose the pain points of a shutdown. When you shut down the government, it's shut down. You can't say, we don't want the pain of layoffs. We don't want the pain of services from the government being cut off. And that's the challenge here.
A real quick last question to you. Are Democrats really waiting for Saturday's nationwide No Kings rallies to finally say, okay, we'll open it back up again?
No, listen, I didn't care when the No Kings rally happened the first time. I won't care when it happens the second time.
That's a great answer.
All right. Thanks, folks. Good to see you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Well, we begin in Tel Aviv with Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin. Good evening, Jennifer.
Good evening, Brett. A nation that held its breath for an agonizing 738 days watched as all 20 living Israeli hostages were freed from Hamas captivity.
Matan Zangauker's mother cried, "You are my life," upon seeing her son. Evyatar David, shown in Hamas propaganda videos, being forced to dig his own grave, embraced his parents. Twin brothers Gali and Ziv Berman, separated by Hamas, hugged upon seeing each other for the first time in 2 years. They were given matching jerseys from their favorite soccer team to wear on the helicopter flight from the IDF military base where their families gathered to meet them. Noah Argamani, separated from her boyfriend Avi Natan Or on October 7th as both were dragged by Hamas terrorists into Gaza, had been waiting for him every day since her rescue last year. Alon Ohel, a musician whose piano became the symbol of his captivity, sat between his parents, holding the lyrics to a song which he told other hostages he wanted to hear upon his release. And Omri Miran reintroduced himself to his 2 daughters. They have few memories of him. As Air Force One approached Tel Aviv, down below a message of thanks from the Israeli people. Before landing, President Trump flew over Hostages Square, now renamed Freed Square, before traveling to Jerusalem, where he met the hostages' families, received Israel's highest civilian honor, and signed a message to the Israeli people, announcing today is a new beginning.
And after so many years of unceasing war and endless danger, today the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace.
Nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees, including 250 serving life sentences, were freed from Israeli prisons today and bused back to the West Bank and Gaza. For the Israelis and Palestinians, now begins the hard part, reuniting with friends and family, treating the unseen wounds, healing a nation and an entire region.
Tonight, 4 coffins containing the remains of 4 deceased Israeli hostages were handed over to the Red Cross and made their way back into Israel. 24 Israeli families are still awaiting their deceased loved ones that were supposed to be released by Hamas as part of the deal, but Hamas says they aren't sure where they are. Brett?
Jennifer Griffin live in Tel Aviv. Jennifer, thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.